Thank you very much, Mr. Manguel. We'll now begin our questions, starting with me, followed by the ranking member. We'll then alternate between the parties. I'll now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Start with you, Mr. Pemberton. Countless congressional staffers have been robbed within a mile of the Capitol. Last year, a staffer for Senator Rand Paul, he was stabbed repeatedly, puncturing his lungs and skull. A member of Congress was assaulted in an elevator, and a representative was carjacked just down the road. All these crimes happened within a mile of here, largely in Ward 6, represented by Councilmember Charles Allen. We invited Allen to speak today, but he rejected that invitation. Mr. Pemberton, you mentioned some of the bills that the D.C. Council passed in the last 2 years that have had a negative impact on policing. I want to focus in on the Youth Rehabilitation Act that passed in 2018 that reduced sentences for first-time offenders. Is it true that the bill raised the age of what is considered a youth to 24 years of age?
That's correct.
So if a 24-year-old was to commit a carjacking with a gun at our nation's capital, they would be eligible for a reduced sentence under that law?
That's correct.
Have you encountered people who've used this program more than once, contrary to how the program was sold?
Absolutely.
So you know individuals who are well over the age of 18, up to the age of 24, who could commit a carjacking with a gun, be eligible for a reduced sentence, and that can happen multiple times?
Yes, absolutely.
And what would be the impact of an individual who does this? What's your analysis of that law?
There's no consequence for the actions of their behavior, and they understand that. So when they get back out on the street, they're free to recommit these crimes as often as they like.
What does that do to the morale of police officers serving in the Metropolitan Police Department?
It's horrible because you're arresting people for violent crimes, and then they're back out on the street the next day, and then they're never held accountable for their actions. And it really takes an impact on morale.
So an officer would risk their life to try to apprehend a dangerous criminal, in this case maybe a 24-year-old who carjacked someone with a gun, only to find out that this individual is treated as a youth in our nation's capital with limited consequences and can find themselves back out on the street in short order to commit another crime?
This is what happens more often than not. Yeah, this is regular.
So then if we look at the numbers in D.C., violent crime increased last year by 39%, homicides increased 35%, robberies increased 67%, and carjackings increased 82%. And so for those reasons, we created a House Security Resources Guide after a briefing with you last September. Would you agree that the D.C.'s increase in crime is a direct result of the policies pushed by the D.C. City Council and anti-policing and soft-on-crime policies?
Absolutely.
And to go to you, Mr. Manguel, is it safe to say that the nationwide research shows a correlation between increased crime and anti-policing soft-on-crime policies?
Absolutely.
Let me come back to you, Mr. Pemberton, if I can. In 2023, D.C. had the 5th highest homicide rate of any city in the country. That's saying something. And it's not saying anything good. Meanwhile, the average homicide suspect in our nation's capital had already been arrested 11 times. Is that accurate?
That is correct, yes.
And so we're looking at these trends where officers are arresting time and again as having a detrimental impact on morale, correct?
Absolutely.
And so, Mr. Pemberton, in your testimony, you mentioned the Comprehensive Policing and Justice Reform Act was negatively impacting police. There was a number of policies that are in there. Can I ask you what the impact of negative rhetoric by the D.C. City Council towards police has had on officers?
Yes, so the discussions that came out around all these pieces of legislation and then the regular conversations that the council has about policing generally are incredibly negative. And the message is loud and clear from the council, and the rank and file members are receiving that. The council does not like police officers. They do not want them doing police work. They don't want them making arrests, and they certainly don't want them getting out and stopping and investigating people. That message is loud, and it drives people away from the department, and people who, those that don't leave the department are apprehensive about doing their job.
Thank you. And then is noted, because of the dramatic increase in crime, in particular in the area surrounding the Capitol. This has an overflow effect on you, Chief Manger, in your officers. Is it accurate that last year Capitol Police made 234 arrests related to DUI, assaults, drugs, motor vehicle thefts, and weapon law violations?
That's correct.
And so have you seen a dramatic uptick in those types of arrests in the Capitol Hill area over the last 4 years?
Yes, we have.
And is it made your job harder and the job of the U.S. Capitol Police harder to deliver on your chief mission, which is securing and protecting the Capitol complex?
Yes, but we look at our crime-fighting responsibilities as integral to our mission. So it's just like so many other areas of our mission, it has just increased. The volume of work has increased.
Understood. We appreciate the work that you and the men and women under your command do every day. I think D.C. In 2023 is a stark example of what happens when anti-police, soft-on-crime policies are implemented. The data is clear. When you make a police officer's job harder and more difficult, when you denigrate the service of police officers, when you defund police, there's negative consequences. In contrast, we are going to continue to support the law enforcement officers, and in particular the law enforcement officers at Capitol Police who are doing their job to protect visitors, staff members, and members here, and will ensure that they have the resources to do their job. I'm committed to making sure the U.S. Capitol and the surrounding area are safe. I'll yield back, and I now recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes.